Welcome to this PreSeed Academy where we are doing something new. So as an IT investor, I guess PreSeed Ventures also decided, hey, we have to go online now. So something good is coming out of this this crisis is that we're all having to adjust. And so this is a test. Of course, we can say we're prepared as much as we can, but it's also a test for us. So we really like to have your feedback after this webinar about what you think. But the topic of this talk is something that I personally think is extremely important, and is mental health, how we deal with that from a founder perspective. So we have an agenda the next hour with one topic, and that is to avoid being this guy. And it's something that is still a taboo out there. It's not something you hear a lot about in the media. In the media, we talk a lot about, oh, this startup raised a lot of money, they got exited to this fund, this company, and we're all very happy about that. But when you really talk with a lot of startup founders, also investors, but mostly founders, you really find out how hard it is to do a startup. Here on this slide, you just see one survey about it, but in general, you can just say it's stressful to be a founder. And it's always been that. It's always stressful because you can run out of money and don't really know about the future. But of course, what's happening right now these days is it's even more stressful, because a lot of founders who thought they were on the right path are now in a really shitty situation. So I know personally a lot of founders who have been close to raising an investment round, and that have basically been pulled away in just a few weeks ago. So going from, yes, we are on a very successful track, to we have severe problems. So the topic of today is how we can deal with that. And the first speaker is Cecilia, who will introduce herself in detail later, but she's a professional within this area and will talk about the different phases of a crisis from, you can say, a manager or leader perspective, and how we as startup founders need to deal with that, and what we can do. Hopefully we'll get some tips and tricks on that. And after that, and that's approximately 25 minutes, we'll go into a panel discussion with not only Cecilia and myself, but also Mads and Ken, Mads from PreSeed and Ken from Luna. And we'll discuss this both from, you could say, professional perspective, from Cecilia, but also from a founder and investor perspective. And Mads and Ken will introduce themselves later, so that you know more about who they are. So that we'll spend approximately the last half hour on. So the agenda, I'll do this very quick. I can see it's even 0 minutes in my talk. Okay, small typo there. We'll hand over to Cecilia, and then the live Q&A session. So the word is yours, Cecilia.
Thank you so much, Nicolaj, and thank you so much for having me. I'm very pleased to see a VC that put lights on this. I think it's very positive and very needed in these times. Especially when I see what the founders that I work with right now are dealing with. And I think that in the media right now, and especially in the startup scene, there has been a lot of focus on capital, on you know, how to raise capital in these times, and how long is your runway, and so on. But there's been very little talk about the human capital and how to protect that. And this is really, really crucial because we all know that a lot of startups fail due to interpersonal problems, due to lack of focus on the human capital. So I would very much like to and hopefully I can share today what I see out there, what the founders I work with are dealing with, and then hopefully you can mirror and reflect yourself in this. Who am I? My name is Cecily, and I'm a business psychologist. I work with founders and founder teams. I collaborate with corporate VCs and VCs, and I help them to perform better. I help them to solve interpersonal conflicts, and I help them to keep sane and mentally strong when they build their business, because it is their mind that they're building their business with. Together with together with PreSeed, we are testing right now a concept called Circles, which is a peer-to-peer learning group for founders that where we create a safe space where founders can talk about all the, you can say, emotional stuff there is building a business. So all the fear, the anxiety, the doubt, also the joy there is as a founder when you build a company. And this is also the collaboration I have with PreSeed. So in regards to today, I think that when I reflected on what I could give to you guys out there, I can also see that in, you know, LinkedIn and so on, there has been a lot of great inputs on very tangible things that you can do in order to stay mental healthy. So in regards to getting your sleep, meditate, practice mindfulness, remember to exercise every day, eat, how to create, you know, a great remote working environment, and how to remind yourself to turn on all these, you can say, media cover all the time in order to give yourself a mindful, you know, kind of a peace in your mind. And these things are all really essential and really important to remember. But they have been covered a lot, so I'm not going to dig into them. But what I would very much like to share with you instead is to go into the psychological phases that I see founders go through right now, what they're dealing with. And kind of, so there's two things I would like to today is to give you an insight into this, what they're dealing with, in order for you to create maybe a bigger awareness about yourself and what you are dealing with, but also what your team is dealing with. So a greater understanding of yourself in a time of crisis. And also how to handle yourself and your team in this time of crisis. So kind of hands-on, you can say, concrete actions to then what to do about it. So that's the two things I would like to share with you today. And then hopefully you will pose a lot of questions or thoughts on the subject. That would be really, really great. Yes? So when I work with startup teams and founders right now, I can see that they go through what people go through when they are in time of crisis. And this model is a psychological model created by Johan Kullberger, who is a Swedish psychiatrist. And he has studied which psychological phases do people go through in the time of crisis. And I can really see that when I work with founders, it's very much these phases that they go through. And it's very normal and it's human to go through these phases. So it's not like you're not a successful founder if you go through these phases. It is normal feelings, and it is feelings that humans are coping strategies which help us basically to survive. So there's nothing bad in this. When we entered kind of the first phases, the first week of the COVID-19 crisis, I could see that a lot of founders were what Johan Kullberg calls in the shock phase. So that's kind of the first week or first 2 weeks of the crisis. And what I could see is that a lot of founders really focused on these short-term actions, what to do right now. And they really had a need to act. And I could also see that the team had a great unity. So I think a lot of founders and founder teams and also startup teams really felt this spirit of, you know, we are going to do this together, a high level of energy. We are really, you know, we are working from home, but we are, you know, going to have Friday bars. We are just really going to, you know, go through this together. So the shock phase in general is kind of the phase where things are surreal. It's the first phase of a crisis. So it's where you think kind of, am I part of a bad dream, or am I waking up and this is a film or a movie? But these were kind of the things I really saw, that founders were very focused on these short-term actions. And sometimes these short-term actions were really, you can say, great and interesting, but sometimes you could also wonder kind of what is the overall strategic point with doing that. But that was very much what I saw. And then what I see now is that founders and founder teams go into what I call the reaction phase. And this is the phase where you, as a founder, begin to react emotionally to the crisis. So this is where all the feelings begin to pop up. And you could also reflect upon this in regards to your team. So this is also where all behaviors and all team dynamics, which are maybe not always that effective, pops up. So this is maybe where the dysfunction shows. You can say in many ways the reaction phase is a little bit the phase where we take off the masks, yeah, and we begin to have maybe more conflicts in the team. And for example, I work with a founder that has a tendency to have, when he gets pressured, an aggressive behavior towards his team. And this is behaviors like this that will begin to pop up. I also see founders that begin to experience the feeling of doubt, you know, doubting their own team. Is this the right team I have? You know, and what are they really motivated about? This is also where I experience a lot of fear. So kind of the fear about, you know, how am my life gonna look like, and how am my business gonna look like, you know, in the next 6 months, year, 2 years. So a lot of the feelings are popping up and a lot of reactions. And what I also see here is a tendency to what I call founder omnipotence. So it's the tendency that founders refuse to get help. And as a founder team and as a VC, I would very much look for this, because this is not a healthy sign at all. This should be kind of an alarm clock. So what I see is that some founders begin to refuse the help. They begin to not being able to delegate even anymore. They want to have kind of a sense of control. They pull everything, you know, all decision making, all actions to themselves, and begin to dig very much into details. And forget about the overview. So it's also kind of, I see a lot of founders that are actually micromanaging in this phase, where they should probably do the opposite. And I collaborate with a business psychologist in Tel Aviv, and I've been having a lot of interesting talks with her right now about what she is experiencing, that founders are experiencing in Tel Aviv right now, which is very much the same as what founders are experiencing in Denmark. And what she described to me in this phase was that she could see that a lot of the founders she worked with, they were really, really, you know, great at keeping the overall big vision for the company. That was one of their competences and big strength. And she said, for the first time, working with these founders for several years, they were not really focusing on that anymore. They were focusing on little, stupid, conflicts that didn't mean anything in the team. And that is, of course, because you as a human are unable to kind of cope with the overall picture on what does this mean for my company, and instead you kind of try to cope with the things that you are able to cope with. And as a founder, I think you should really be aware about this, have self-awareness about this, because in a time of crisis, you should do exactly the opposite. It's a time of delegation. It's a time of having the overview. Really the overview. You need to use time on revisiting your strategy. Are you doing the right things? How are your team reacting to this? How to keep them motivated? You need to have that overview, and you don't have it if you begin to micromanage and go into details. So overall, the reaction phase, the phase of the feelings, also the phase that is quite long, where you begin to feel exhausted. And then we go into the next phase, and that's the adaptation phase. So that's the phase where we begin to adapt to the new situation. We can begin to see new possibilities in this for ourselves, for our startup. We begin to rebuild and begin to create this positive picture of the future, which is really important both for yourself, but also for your team. And then we go into the reorientation phase. So that's where we accept, okay, this is our new reality, yeah? I think a lot of us right now are in the reorientation phase. We talk about the new normal, yeah? In the start, in the shock phase, we were very focused on when things get back to normal. And now I think as humans, we are beginning to understand that we need to reorientate. We're not gonna go back to a world that is normal. We are beginning to accept and be excited, maybe at some point, about the new world and how it looks in COVID times. And also in the adaptation phase, I also think that that's where I can feel that a lot of founders as well are also practicing gratitude. You know, the gratitude about your team and being in the world, and the gratitude for the smaller things. That's also what's beautiful in a crisis like this, is that we begin to have eyes on it. And generally, if you look at this model and the learnings I have got from founders, that it's not kind of, you know, an A to Z process. So it's a process where we shift. So founders, and including myself, can find themselves, you know, one day or, you know, 1 hour in the reaction phase, and then the next in the adaptation phase. Or maybe sometimes if, you know, you get a shocking message, you go back to the shock phase. So it's a little bit like the dance, yeah? We are dancing between these phases right now, and need to be aware of them, and need to be aware of where are we as founders ourselves right now in these phases, and where is our team. But I still think that as a founder, the way that you handle the different phases and the crisis in the reorientation phase, it will still be really, really important for how you handle them, because it's going to define your culture within your team. It's going to define your reputation within your team, how you dealt with this as a leader under immense pressure. And that's really, really hard. And I also know that a lot of founders will find themselves, or are finding themselves, in a position where they will have to, or had laid people off. And when they do that, they will experience that it is exactly the same phases that the people that they are laying off will go through. So the shock phase, I think a lot of founders are surprised about how quickly a conversation about firing somebody actually is. But that's because people are in a sense of shock phase. And then maybe they will begin to react, and so on. So if you are going to find yourself in that phase, it's also a way for you to understand as a leader, where is that person that you're going to give this message? Where will that person be psychologically? Again, I just want to say that this is really normal. Everybody's going through this, more or less, and are jumping between phases. And what I think is important as a founder in these days is to have the awareness about where am I right now in the phase, and how is that affecting how I lead? How is that affecting the way I take business decisions, and so on. So creating this self-awareness is really, really important, because when you begin to know and notice where you are, you can also begin to create self-management. So for example, in this phase, and if you are in the reaction phase and you get really, really angry with your co-founder, you can ask yourself, try to stop and say, okay, is this reaction of anger, is this because I am in one of these phases right now? Or is it something else? So what is this about? And how will this anger actually, influence the startup right now? Should I stop it, or should I act on my anger? And that is a self-management that is really important to have as a founder and as a leader, and which is really, really difficult, especially in times where you're under pressure and in a crisis. So, what to do about it? So how to handle yourself and your team? I have created a model that includes 3 areas. So A for awareness, V for vulnerability, and C for conditions. And the first one I talked about before, that it's really important as an action that you have awareness of where you are in your own phase and which emotions you have right now. So instead of only as a founder having the eyes, outside on the world, also try to have one eye inside and one eye on yourself. And then have awareness of your team's phases and emotions. Where are they right now, and how can you lead them best? And in that awareness for yourself, it's also a really great idea to kind of try to label your feelings. Try to say, what are you feeling right now? Are you feeling anger? Are you feeling doubt? Are you feeling joy? Feelings are like energies in our bodies that or soap bubbles. If we begin to become aware of them, if we begin to speak about them, they have a tendency to slowly go away and disappear like soap bubbles. That's quite amazing. So also, in order to create awareness, write your feelings down, just 1 minute every day if you have the possibility to do that. And then vulnerability, a really, really important point. This is the time to show vulnerability. And here I mean, as a founder, find somebody that you can empty your emotional backpack to. It could be a good friend, it could be, somebody that you have a lot of, trust in, but just somebody where you can talk about what's difficult right now. And I would even say, try to use the resources you have right now as a founder, because you have a lot of resources that you could use. And it's, in times of crisis, it's not a time to be your own Superman or hero. It's time to use the resources around you. And also use your VC. I mean, most VCs that I work with, they really, they need to feel needed. They like that. They like to be needed. So use them. Make them feel needed in these times. And also try to facilitate vulnerability in your own team. So talk about emotions. This is a really unique possibility to have an emotional connection with your team and create trust. And we know from Google research and all that teams that have a high degree of trust perform much better than teams that do not have. So talk with your employees. What is hard for them right now? What are they dealing with? But also, have they been reflecting in these times of being at home of what motivates them? A lot of people have been having these thoughts, I think, about what motivates me. Where am I really happy in my job? And as a founder, you're also a leader. And you need to motivate your people also in these times. And then the conditions, that's the C, the conditions for your performance and your team's performance. And here I mean that try to create the conditions where you perform the best. So if you know that you need food at a certain time, you need to sleep, or you need to collaborate in a certain way in order for you to perform. Really have a focus on this, because this is a really important time that you perform as a founder. And I think a good method for this is to look at, okay, where do I have days where I really perform well? And look back and say, okay, which conditions were there when I performed that way? Which were the good days and what made them good days? And also look at your team. What are the conditions for their team performance? What needs to be there in order for them to perform, even under pressure right now? Because we don't always have the greatest conditions for performance, which right now, Corona has shown that. It's the same with athletes. Sometimes they need to do a marathon in the desert, but that's their condition, but they still need to perform. So really have an eye on that as well. So I think in general, I think that I hope that I gave you a little bit of an insight on the things that I'm working with and what I see that founders are dealing with right now, but also some tools to handle it in yourself and in your team. And I think that mental health, especially right now, it's your founder responsibility to have a focus on that. It's not only a nice to have, because if you're not mentally healthy, you're not going to be able to lead. You're not going to be able to build your company. You're not going to be able to motivate your people. So it's a business strategic decision to focus on yourself. Really, really important. Do that. Yeah. So that was it for me. I think that was my words. I hope it made a little bit sense for you. And otherwise, I'm looking so much forward to the dialogue and the questions.
Thanks a lot, Cecile. If you would unshare your screen so I can, thanks a lot. We go now over to a panel discussion, and as a part of that, I would like Mads and Ken to spend a few seconds introducing yourself. Maybe Ken, you could introduce basically your background and what you're doing right now.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. So I am the CEO and founder of a Danish fintech company called Luna. Luna is around 150 people based in Aarhus, Copenhagen, Stockholm, and Oslo. And in August of 19, we were awarded with a banking license. So we're kind of sitting on top of an actual banking license right now. And just out of Cecily's presentation, I feel like I'm in the shock phase every week of the month. So that was an interesting perspective.
Thanks a lot. Mads, you need to be unmuted, I can see, but if you could talk.
Yes, hello, and thank you for having me as well. So I'm Mads, I'm Talent Director of PreSeed Ventures. I meet all teams prior to investment, try to assess how founders react in these kinds of situations, and then I build operations programs and help them build boards and so on, and be a support along the way as they grow. So I have a lot of perspective on what do I think founders need in order to perform best at crisis, and how should you conduct yourself as well.
Thanks a lot. One small technical question is that I can't see the Q&A when I share my screen. So I said this was a sort of a test, and now I'm in the silly situation that I can't see the chat. So maybe I could have one of you, either Alice or Louise from PreSeed to help you. Otherwise, I just have to stop sharing. But then Cecile, maybe you can share your screen. Yeah, we could just keep it like this because I will unshare. So if we start with some of the questions, unfortunately I can't share my screen. There's a question here about any factors that can help founders through these reactions. Well, you have identified anything we basically can do. Is it diverse team? Is it any factors that you've seen that can affect this process so we get through it easily or easier? Cecile, do you have any comment to that?
And so your question is that if there is any factors in regards to team composition?
Yeah, you can also see the question yourself if you press the Q&A in the bottom.
Yes.
Then you can, yeah.
Yes. Okay. I don't know which question it is.
The one in the top.
So it's a question in regards to team composition, or is it in general?
In general.
In general. Okay, so I think so what I wrote about or what I talked about, I think one of the most important factors, is really this self-awareness. To be aware of where you are yourself emotionally. As a founder right now, your own emotional state will very much spill over on your team and will define whether or not you will be able to lead in this time of crisis. So having this self-awareness is probably, one of the most important things as a founder and as a leader right now. And having that awareness on your team as well. Where are they right now? Really, really important.
Mads, maybe we can get your perspective because, sitting in your position at PreSeed, you talk with a lot of startups. Could you share some of your insights on, what's happening? What's the difference, if any, between some of them who are doing better or coping better with the situation than others? Have you any insights on this area?
I think we are starting to see some trends. We've been doing pretty tough assessments of all teams for the past 3 years. We see some profiles that are more eligible of handling crisis than others. And then we see, the live due diligence part where we see the companies perform. There's definitely a correlation between the ones who are reaching out for help and the ones who are performing better at crisis. I don't want to make the bridge towards capacity and certain profiles, but that's definitely what we see, that the best ones are the ones who are best at reaching out. And also, as Cecilie says, I think that's very important, to share their uncertainties and become vulnerable towards others. That can be quite difficult, especially towards us as investors. But that's also why we are trying to sort of stage these psychological free rooms around the circles where you have the ability to share your disbeliefs and your uncertainties with someone who is similar or in the same boat. That's probably easier than going back to your wife and saying, this is really bad. I know you put all your money in this, but just trust me. I'm just saying it's not going as well as we thought we would be. So we're trying to build sort of these circles where people can share their disbeliefs and vulnerabilities to someone who's similar. And that seems to have been working for a while. The circles are new, but people who share are better at performing.
Ken, maybe you can share some insight. I think, unlike some of the startups I know, I think you've been in a situation that, as far as I remember, you raised a big funding round, quite recently, right? But maybe you can share some of basically your experience from inside Luna. How have your employees taken this new situation, and how have you tried to deal with this?
So I think actually for us, for the business of Luna, in the current state that we live in, it's actually not showing negative impact, because we are born with a Nordic play, so we are more or less a regional bank, and regional banks has never been more time actual than now. I think globalization has to some extent been cancelled or postponed for the next 6, 9, 12 months. So we can actually see progress in our numbers. I was on a call with a few other challenger banks the other day, and they saw a decline at 60%, and we are seeing an improvement of 11%. So no, we really haven't felt that impact that the current times are changing that much on our business right now. So I think just on the current situation, we're not heavily impacted. I think to your input around fundraising though, I think, we have never seen more than 5-6 months of runway. So that has been a massive headache since we started the business. It requires a lot of capital to build a bank. So we have raised around 500 million Danish kroner right now, and we need to raise significantly more. So I think that has been our biggest mental obstacle to look into that short runway since we began the business.
Yeah. What about your employees? So haven't there come a lot of questions for some of your employees about what this mean for us? Are we going to fire people? How have you handled that? Basically, if you take Cecilia's point, have you been very open, or what have been your communication strategy towards your employees? Because I guess they read the newspapers every day which says crisis, all startups are going to fire people, and then what?
We have been really transparent. So we have had weekly Corona updates with the actual headline Corona updates, where HR has telling about the new structure around working, how we're getting, just simple things as meals being delivered to the company. How will we sit going forward? Also now when we are slowly reopening, how would we organize people coming back to the offices? So really transparent around the structure around the crisis. And then we have on a management level also been vocal about the fact that we have not seen a direct impact now, but we need to be maybe more agile than ever because of the surroundings that we live in. As an example, we have had a lot of marketing initiatives planned for our growth within Q1 and Q2, and all of those has just been canceled overnight. So that agile mindset to, you can plan for something and the next week, that event is being closed down. That is something that we've been working hard on.
Yeah.
And I also want to comment to your good points, Ken, is that as a founder right now, don't underestimate the need for communication. You have probably also felt that, Ken, that as a founder and as a leader, you really feel, okay, I have said that already, but you maybe sometimes need to say things 7 times before people feel safe and secure around it. So continue to communicate to the point where you're almost sick about it yourself as a founder. That's the moment where you know that you have really been good at communicating.
If I can add in a few points here from a, you could say, private investor business perspective, I see basically not only in this crisis, but in crisis in general, 2 types of reactions from founders. You know a founder and they're struggling, and some of them are open about it, and some of them are trying to keep up appearances and said, yeah, everything is fine. But at some point in time, reality comes out, right? Mm-hmm. And the longer it takes for them to get out, the harder the discussion they're going to take with investors, right? Mm-hmm. It's honestly easy in the beginning and say, hey, our sales forecast for Q1 and Q2 might be impacted. We don't know it yet, how much, but this is how it is, and of course how they deal with that. And then the other type of founders who I see are creating problems for themselves because the problem is not going away when they're not talking about it. There'll just be a bigger mismatch between my expectation as an investor and reality. So I think, and it maybe leads over to the next question that we see here in the chat about how much a founding team should share these feelings, not only with employees, but with also stakeholders. That could be customers, but it could also be investors. Maybe Cecile, you could start and say, I know it's not maybe your core area, but what are you seeing that you startups you're dealing with, are they doing? Are they sharing it internally only, or are you also encouraging them to do it, you can say, externally?
I'm also encouraging them to do it externally with their VCs or their boards. I really think that also if you have a great board, use them right now. So again, use your resources and talk about what's difficult right now and ask for help. If you have a great board or if you have a great VC, then you have resources with people who have been through, the financial crisis. They have a lot of learnings. where they can help you. So use that, as Mads also said, and I'm definitely encouraging that.
Mads, any comments on that? On how now we're moving both into, you could say, a mix of handling the crisis from a personal perspective into also a communication strategy. But what would you advise your startups to do? In terms of
as I said before, this is sort of a DNA thing. We have a lot of portfolio companies, and so to us, it's super important that we keep track. And if they need our help, we try to be on top of everything because it's important for us and it's important for our business. But it's also very important that they reach out. And as I said before, my claim is that the ones who are on top of this crisis, or any crisis in general, is the ones that sort of adopted this transparency and communication stigma right away. So that means calling in, saying to the board, these numbers are not going to hold. Q1, Q2 is going to be straight to hell. We need contingency plans to come up. If you reach out, there's a higher possibility of getting help. Mm-hmm. There's stuff we can do and there's stuff we can't do. But right now also we have a great overview of the portfolio, and as some are actually, as Ken's company are having a great success these days, some are not as lucky and need some more support, and we will definitely help them. But if they don't tell us what they need, it's very, very difficult for us to help. So please just reach out and let's have a chat about it. Let's see what we can do.
There's another question here, maybe that is as a starting point to use Cecile, about how you identify your own behavior. So how do you identify whether you're crazy or not? Any tips or tricks on how you do that? Because it's, as we all know, when you're
Nicolaj, so you are a bit crazy if you're
yeah, you're always crazy, right? But are you 50% crazy or too crazy? So Cecile, how do you identify in which stage you're in yourself?
I think, and a really, really good question for the person who posed that, and that's kind of a difficult thing, of course, to identify. It's again a feeling, looking inwards, kind of saying, taking the time to reflect, where am I right now? Where do I think I am? I don't have I think in these rational times, we always need kind of a list, a checklist. Okay, if you feel like this, bam, 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 you're in this space. It doesn't really work like that. So it's more of an internal feeling of where you feel you are right now. And again, maybe you have, an hour or half an hour where you are, in the reaction phase, and then the next moment you feel like you are in the reorientation phase, and that's okay. Everything is normal. But what I think that in regards to create more self-awareness, sometimes it's also great to get feedback from your employees on this. How are you leading right now? How are you reacting under pressure? Get feedback from people around you, because you will always have a big black spot on yourself, and you will always, even people who think they're really self-aware have big black spots on themselves. So also reach out to the people around you and say, can I help more here, and how am I leading right now, and do you need more from me, as a leader? Can I help you more?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So I think we can move over to the next question about what do you think will be the long-term psychological or mental consequences for founders who go through this? Because you've been through this crisis that is not just a normal small crisis, right? It's really something that for many founders who are in is such a big shift from being in a boom 1 month ago, where capital was easy, where positive spirit, everything, to now that, again, from some startups, it's also opportunity. That could be for Ken or some of my startups, but for most of us, it will be really a big stressful period. What do you think that the long-term, is there any positive outcome out of this? Do you see some self-reflection, all things that happen in a time of crisis, or is it mostly negative?
No, I don't see at all that it's mostly negative. I see that this sounds really hard when you're deep into it, but of course this is also a huge learning phase as a founder. So you can really grab this and take it as a possibility to learn about yourself and develop yourself. And in every great learning or pivoting or leap of yourself, it is, you know, it is going to be hard. It's not only, you know, positive feelings, because otherwise you would not be involving. So I definitely think this is a unique possibility. I know a lot of founders as well have also done a lot of reflection about, you know, their own life, motivation, why I'm into this, and so on. And I think, especially when I see founders that get this huge amount of money from VCs, that they kind of, you know, when I work with them, then some of them kind of forget why they started the company. So they have been so busy getting the money, and they have, you know, dragged this well in, and then all of a sudden they need to cope with that. And then in the process, they have forgotten, you know, why they want to do it. And so this is maybe also a phase where to really reflect, why are you in this? Why do you want to build this company? So definitely, yeah.
So maybe we can hand over the word to Ken. You know, Ken, if you had said, Nicolaj, I'm always only have 5 or 6 or 7 months of financial runway, I would be stressed. I would just be, oh my God, how are you handling that, Ken? So not the Corona crisis, but the, so to say, the simple fact that when you're close around, that you know that in 6 months you will need to close more money. Isn't that, how are you handling that kind of stress?
That's a good question. I was hoping to get some answers on that from you guys on this call, actually. I think, you know, it goes without a doubt. It is stressful, and it's stressful, and it's a period of uncertainty, and at the same time you have to build your business and you have to hire new people. But you know, that was, for us, it was the model that we went into. I think so, like, on a personal level, I try to use a lot of tools for reduce that stress level. So I have like a business psychologist on my own side that I talk with. I have a lot of conversation with other founders that have been through the same process. I read a lot of biographies of founders that kind of went through the same process, trying to build that persistence up towards the goal. But it is stressful. It's stressful, and it's a tough journey. And I think maybe to the question we had before on the long-term consequences, I kind of feel on a personal level also that you're losing some level of emotions because you're living through those stressful period of times. So to prepare yourself for that mental journey, you try to prevent being hit in that shock phase that we heard about early on, but not going into that shock phase also puts you on a baseline on emotions. So, and that has the effect that you're not kind of partying hard when you're actually succeeding, you know, because you're continuing on that baseline on emotion. So you're not going down into shock phase, but you're not going up into celebration either. So that has maybe for me on a personal level, that long-term consequence that you're getting stuck on that baseline, that nothing can hurt you, and you don't have to party that much when you're, you know, succeeding.
Good point. So Mads, here's a question to you. You mentioned about that founders should go out to maybe the VCs or investors and also ask for help and get their feedback and also be open. But what if you're a really early stage startup, maybe don't have these kind of more experienced investors on board yet? What would you do? How should they cope with this? Any comments on that?
Yeah. So I think, and as Ken just said, you know, he knew the journey. He did a startup before, so he had some of the bones before he got into this game. I think you know, finding out where your strengths and weaknesses are in any situation is always a good starting point. I mean that both on a personal level, but also on a professional level. If we start with the personal level, I think you know, finding a soul searcher, someone you can share your feelings with, is a very good idea. If you have money, if you are that lucky, paying for a business psychologist will really make a good plan, or a coach or someone like that can sort of mirror your thoughts. on the more professional level, and this is something that we do very consistently here at PreSeed Ventures, is that we try as soon as we make an investment to help our teams and our companies to set up professional boards. It's not as boring as it sounds. I have made some talks on this early on, but really to see if we can find someone who's done part of the journey, maybe the whole journey, who can supplement the team on the stuff that they don't know about, and especially the relationship between the founder and the founders and the chairman of the board, who has sort of a grandfather role, if you will. Someone who has the time and has the seniority, has the experience to sort of sit down and take time with the founders and say, this isn't that bad. I was down at the Biscay and the chef came in and all that kind of stuff. So someone who can really mirror bad situations with you and try to help you through this troubled time. So boards and personal stuff, I think it's important in this sense.
Here's another question. I think I mistakenly said that it has been answered, but there's a person here asking about whether a person with schizophrenia should be starting a company. Again, I'm not an expert in this area. I'll just talk from a more general area point of view. And my general point of view is that I don't think it's something for everyone, that entrepreneurship in general is for everyone. I think if you're creating a high-risk startup from the bottom, it will always be stressful, like always be stressful. Now we talk about the Corona crisis, and of course that adds something to it. But to be on a journey like Ken's or some of the other startups we invested in, it always takes 7 to 10 years, and it's extremely stressful. And I can just see in my network that some personalities cope with that better than others. And again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going into detail with that, but that's my point of view. I don't know, Cecile, what your point of view is about whether everyone is suited for entrepreneurship, or you see someone being hurt more than others.
I think I agree very much with a lot of your points. It's not that I kind of have an overview of personality types and what people are dealing with, and I think that in regards to founders and leaders, that sometimes when we say that it surprises us that somebody we thought wouldn't make it are making it. I think it's really difficult to say. What I think what I want to add in regards to feelings is that I also think that, of course you need to really look at the stress and the feelings that you are coping with, that it doesn't get too much. But a tool that I just want to share with you that I use with my with the people I work with, but that I use with myself as well, is to say that sometimes when we get the feelings that we don't like, sometimes when we get fear or or we get stressed, that we kind of try to push them away. But sometimes these feelings are also the fuel. So they are not only negative, they are also the fuel that makes you do and perform the way you do right now. So in some ways, some of these feelings are also your friend. I'm just saying, of course, they should not tip over in regards to stress. But in sometimes it can be great to welcome some of these feelings and say, of course I'm stressed. I'm in a stressful situation. But it's okay that this stress feeling is with me right now. I can, have that feeling with me and I can still perform. So it's about looking at these feelings. Are they helping you to perform what you need to perform? Or are they blocking where you need to go? Because then they begin to become a problem. And when I
think we're almost running out of time. So maybe that leads to the question here about one thing we can do. I think we have got a point from you, Cecile. Maybe we could say the same to Ken and Mads. One thing that advice you would give a founder if they could, how to better cope with this. Mads, maybe you can start. What should they do if you should say one thing about how to cope with this better?
I think the sharing part makes a lot of sense, but also being aware of where you should share stuff. This is why I talk about making sort of this. We talked about the founder circles before, but also you can in a sense say that what we're advising people to do is to be very tight connect with advisor, board members, coaches, and so on. Because you also have to remember that in these times, leadership is very much appreciated. And that means that, it's fine to be transparent about the stuff, and you should be, authenticity is also a big part of leadership, but you should also be able to balance your communication with someone who is a bit more on the outside and who can mirror your thoughts so you can see if it actually makes sense. So that's what I think, anyway.
Great. Ken, any comments on any advice on what you should do to better cope with
I think that, definitely. I think that, and that's really from a personal experience. So as I said, I started talking to this coach/business psychologist like 6 months ago. And in my opinion, there's a huge difference than talking to a VC and talking to a chairman and a board of directors and talking to that kind of person. So I would have done that like years before. And also hearing from Mads that investors really like to invest in founders. I think if there's any founders on the line, you should just put in that the investor should pay a couple of thousands on a monthly basis to the founder, so they have that opportunity, because that's something totally different than talking to your chairman about mental health.
Yes. If I should end this, I would say for me personally, it's about sleep. And of course, it's extremely hard because, it's always in a time of crisis, you don't have time to sleep. But if I don't get my 7 hours of sleep, I get sort of semi-depressed, bad mood, take silly decisions. So I would rather do less work, and I need my 7 hours of sleep. That is my personal opinion about this. We're almost out of time. And I think it's important that we also end on time, because I think people have meetings back to back these days. So what I would like you to get out of this is that some hands-on insight from the panel about what you can actually do. I think there was a lot about sharing, but also a lot from Cecile about understanding yourself. Also about sharing in different groups. That could be to a VC, and if you can afford it, also to a business psychologist. Another way to share, maybe not direct link, but we have open doors at this PreSeed Academy, which is not about pitch. It's basically about getting feedback. Our next event is next week, April 29th, where we have an open door event. I think actually Mads will be there, where you get 30 minutes in front of one of the investment managers for PreSeed or me, and we can discuss almost whatever you like, as long as it's business oriented. So again, this is not a pitch. This is a way for you to get feedback. That is next week. You can apply at PreSeed Academy. And the next talk that also will be virtual will be on May 5th. And that's about warrants. And that is also extremely relevant here in a time of crisis, how to incentivize people beyond money. Warrants is something everyone talks about, but very few actually understand and use properly. We will spend 1 hour on that on May 5th to give you some insights on how you can do it better. So with these words, and it's exactly 12 o'clock, I think it's time to end this webinar. Thanks a lot for the panel for coming and take 1 hour out of a busy day, and thanks a lot for everyone attending. And hopefully see you next week.
See you.
See you. Bye.